Africa's new free trade deal. Is the road ahead paved with economic promise or problems? High-tech mental health in real time. And recycled and reused materials are on trend at the Los Angeles Design Show. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first, the United Nations says armed groups in Libya are killing and torturing detainees in prisons where thousands of civilians are being unlawfully held. The UN Human Rights Office and UN support mission in Libya revealed Tuesday that many detainees are held without being charged with a crime or trial since the 2011 revolution that overthrew former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Successful governments in Tripoli have allowed the armed groups to arrest opponents, activists, journalists and politicians while paying the fighters' salaries and providing them with equipment and uniforms. The torture methods include beatings with metal bars, flogging and electronic shocks. Officials say the report is based on interviews, prison visits, video evidence and other sources.
We collected information from first-hand testimonies from victims of violations, from witnesses, from the authorities. We also looked at different documentation, including legal and medical documentation. In terms of places of unofficial detention, it's not clear what the numbers are. It's not properly documented, but we're sure that there are at least thousands of people in unofficial places of detention.
Well, according to the report, official prisons overseen by the Justice Ministry hold an estimated 6,500 inmates, and thousands more are in facilities nominally under government control but run by armed groups. 5 park rangers and their driver were killed by militiamen on Monday in the Democratic Republic of Congo's Virunga National Park. According to the National Parks Director, the team came under gunfire around 6 a.m. local time while traveling to a base near the Ishasha border crossing with neighboring Uganda. The attackers were from one of Congo's Mai Mai militias, which first formed to resist Rwandan invasions in the late 1990s. In the last 20 years, more than 150 rangers have been killed protecting the park, one of the world's last sanctuaries for the endangered mountain gorilla. In East Africa, rapists in Somaliland will now face up to 20 years in jail. The breakaway conservative Islamic region on Monday passed its first law against rape. A senior official says the move was made in a drive to combat gender violence. The bill, which passed Parliament's upper house on Saturday, also criminalizes other forms of gender violence such as forced marriage, trafficking for sexual slavery and sexual harassment. Until now, rape was not defined as a crime in Somaliland, a self-declared republic in the Horn of Africa. That meant perpetrators faced no penalty. Victims' families were instead paid off, or the victim was forced to marry her rapist to avoid public shame. Now that most African states have signed the basic framework agreement setting up the landmark African Continental Free Trade Area, the work on building its critical elements continues. However, several key countries have yet to ink the pact. VOA's senior analyst Jeffrey Young discusses the next steps with the top African Union official and economists.
When 44 African leaders gathered in Kigali last month to sign the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the lavish ceremonies represented more of a cornerstone laying than a ribbon cutting marking completion. Much, it turns out, remains to be done. Via Skype from Nigeria, Economic Research Southern Africa economist Nonso Obikili.
The signing in Kigali was not the establishment of a free trade area, but the signing of a legal framework under which the free trade area will happen. So there's still a lot of protocols to be signed, there's still a lot of negotiations to be had.
Two of Africa's biggest economies have not yet signed the agreement. African Union officials say South Africa's formal approval is expected after Pretoria completes a constitutionally mandated review of the deal. In Nigeria, both the country's Labor Congress and the Manufacturers Association opposed the deal as bad for the country. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari says he will consult again with those groups before moving forward. But a top African Union official says removing tariffs provides greater and more broad-based economic benefits than protectionism offers. Via Skype from Addis Ababa, Commissioner for Trade and Industry Albert Muchanga.
And when that is done, it means that the goods will be much cheaper because there will be less the duty that has been that used to be applied, and that is going to stimulate enhance the production across Africa.
The United Nations estimates that under the deal, African states will lose a collective $4.1 billion in tariff revenue a year. However, it says lower prices will produce what it calls a social benefit to consumers of more than $16 billion annually. Trade between African states amounted to just 10% of the continent's total trade in 2010. The UN's Economic Commission for Africa says that by 2022, the Free Trade Pact could increase inter-African trade by up to 52%. Much of Africa was liberated from colonialism more than a half-century ago, but some old practices remain. The chairman of the Institute of Economic Affairs says Africa's development depends on open commerce, not protectionism and favoritism. From Accra via Skype, Charles Mensah.
What we are doing now is practicing the same old mercantilist economy, the colonial economy, where our government creates rents for business people to extract.
With this free trade pact, African states essentially give up part of their sovereignty to enjoy collective benefits. And that, according to some regional analysts, emotionally goes against the fierce nationalism that drove their gaining freedom. Jeffrey Young, VOA News, Washington.
In South Africa, a massive legal blow for former Paralympic athlete Oscar Pistorius. The Constitutional Court has rejected his request to appeal a 13-year murder sentence. Prosecutors say the decision signals the end of the road for Pistorius and that he has no further recourse for appeal. Pistorius had asked the Constitutional Court to review both his prison sentence and murder conviction for killing his girlfriend, River Steenkamp. Pistorius shot her through the bathroom door of his home on Valentine's Day in 2013. He was initially sentenced to 6 years in prison for culpable homicide, but the sentence was slammed as shockingly low by prosecutors and was doubled to 13 years after being upgraded to murder. On Tuesday, the Constitutional Court ruled that Pistorius' latest appeal did not fall under its jurisdiction. With no other legal options available, it appears Pistorius will have to serve his full term. U.S. President Donald Trump is still not letting on whether he intends to fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who appears to have angered the president after getting a court's permission to search the office of Trump's personal attorney. VOA's Michael Bowman reports.
Trump called the Mueller-endorsed raid on lawyer Michael Cohen's office a disgraceful situation and an attack on our country and a whole new level of unfairness.
Why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens. But I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him. Again, they found nothing.
But the investigation is ongoing, and the special counsel has made no public comments on Trump and how it pertains to Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. The Washington Post reported late Monday Cohen is under federal investigation for possible bank fraud, wire fraud, and campaign finance violations, according to a person with knowledge of the case. The FBI raided Cohen's New York office on Monday and seized documents, including those related to Trump's alleged affair with an adult film star. Cohen paid actress Stormy Daniels $130,000 in the days before the 2016 presidential election to keep quiet about an affair she allegedly had with Trump in 2006.
Mr. President, did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no
Some legal experts believe Cohen's payment may have been an illegal campaign contribution to keep Daniels from speaking out and possibly destroying Trump's chances of getting elected. I'm Michael Brown, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, accessing better mental health treatment on your smart device. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Well, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg faces tough questions on the Hill Tuesday following revelations that the Trump-affiliated political firm Cambridge Analytica accessed the data of as many as 87 million users of the social media site during the 2016 election. VOA's congressional correspondent Katherine Gibson looks at the questions lawmakers are expected to ask to Zuckerberg and the next steps they may take.
Congress will be looking for answers, not just apologies.
And that was a huge mistake. It was my mistake.
Facebook executives faced tough questions last fall about the role ads played in the 2016 election. But the scale of the Cambridge Analytica scandal will bring Zuckerberg face-to-face with lawmakers for the first time. At issue, access to a user's personal information and the accounts of their Facebook friends by third-party apps. The data trove gave Cambridge Analytica information about political and religious beliefs, events attended, and posts liked by millions of Facebook users. Facebook called claims this was a data breach completely false. Current and former commissioners at the Federal Trade Commission, a consumer protection agency, see it differently.
If you're trying to keep something private and you think you've set it to private, but then you have to do 3 more steps, well, that's going to be problematic.
Lawmakers will want to know if Facebook violated a 2011 agreement with the Federal Trade Commission, promising users that third-party apps could only access information needed to function.
They obviously did no due diligence on any of the third-party app developers.
While Facebook could face substantial fines if it was in violation, Congress will also be looking at how Facebook plans to protect users' privacy in the future.
The way that we interact with these platforms is obscured. So in other words, you can't make consent for the most part, and everybody knows this. You don't see the hundreds of eyes that are looking at you as you post something on Facebook. Some of those changes have to come from the design side.
Mark Rotenberg, who helped put the consent decree together, is optimistic the revelations will spur Congress to action on a privacy law for information on the internet.
Facebook would have to give users legal rights about the collection use of their data.
A proposal Zuckerberg is likely to face again during a second round of questions before a House panel Wednesday. Katherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with a look at pregnancy and antidepressant drugs. Lino.
Hello, Vincent.
Well, a new study suggests the brains of babies may develop differently when their mothers take antidepressant drugs during pregnancy. Researchers in the U.S. examined the brain scans of 16 newborns whose mothers took medications known as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors for depression during pregnancy. They also studied 21 infants whose mothers had untreated depression during pregnancy and 61 babies born to women without depression. The study found that infants whose mothers took antidepressants had greater brain volume in regions of the brain that are critical for emotional processing compared to babies whose mothers had untreated depression or were not experiencing depression. The current study does not prove antidepressants directly cause abnormal brain development or cognitive and emotional problems. The research was reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics. Now, a Danish company is using data gathered from patients' mobile phones to trigger health alerts and provide real-time medical advice. 42-year-old Mads Trierblom and 32-year-old Peter Hegeland have been participating in the Monsenso app trial with people suffering from bipolar disorder. The app carries out real-time analysis of physical movement, linguistics, and other data patterns to help treat mental illnesses such as bipolar disorder.
I see myself as a tightrope walker, and this metaphor for living with bipolar disorder is very meaningful in that you have to prevent losing control either to depression or to mania, and you are able to avoid that by early registration on how your mood is fluctuating. So therefore, the app helps you keeping in control in your life.
Because sometimes if you feel depressed, it can be really tricky and hard to tell people I need help. But with the app, the psychiatrists just have a possibility to actually see it pretty fast. And if you get treatment earlier, it will definitely be a lot better than if you get it way later.
This next evolution of the health app helps prevent relapses, and in the worst cases, it could forewarn of a patient who may be contemplating suicide. But its central benefit is in helping to empower the patient. Psychiatrist Christopher Södersten runs a private clinic in Gothenburg, Sweden, and has just started using Monsenso's app for his patients.
Så den mäter acceleration åt olika axlar.
The more people you meet and leave your electronic fingerprint on, the more socially active you are. This type of sensor data can, in combination with self-assessments, provide a hint regarding whether they match up or if there is a discrepancy.
Södersten says the technology is revolutionizing the industry, while the information garnered from the app could lead to better diagnosis. The World Health Organization recently marked a World Health Day. VOA's Carol Pearson looks at what's been accomplished over the past 7 decades and what still needs to be done.
Over the past 70 years, the World Health Organization has spearheaded efforts to free the world of killer diseases like smallpox. It's also formed partnerships to end other diseases like polio.
We're almost there, this close. 99.9% of polio has been eradicated from the world.
That was in 2014. Since then, polio workers have kept up their effort despite conflict and hardship. Last year, 17 children contracted the virus, but polio will only be stamped out when no child gets this disease. Access to life-saving vaccines, not just for polio, but for measles and a host of other viruses, is a problem for many people. That's why the World Health Organization declared the theme for this World Health Day, Health for All.
Much of the world is talking about universal health coverage at the moment. It's one of the really global challenges that we have.
James Fitzgerald oversees the development of universal health coverage in the Americas at the Pan American Health Organization, a regional division of the World Health Organization.
Essentially the same barriers we see elsewhere. They're geographical, the lack of physical availability of healthcare institutions. They are what we call institutional, or relation to the organization of the health system, like waiting times, lack of doctors, nurses, etc. They are financial, where there's just not enough money being put into the system, or people have to pay out of pocket. And then there are issues relating to social discrimination within the health systems.
It's a tall order to see that half the world's people who don't receive the essential health services get what they need without forcing families into poverty to pay medical bills. The WHO argues that when people have access to health care, people live more productive lives. Epidemics can be held at bay, and the countries where they live are more likely to prosper. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa 54. Now, the art scene in the Democratic Republic of Congo is vibrant and flourishing, but talented local artists still struggle for international recognition. VOA's Anita Powell takes us to the studios of some of Kinshasa's top talents, including 25-year-old art sensation Eddie Kamwanga Ilunga.
Painter Eddie Kamwanga Ilunga says he is inspired by his country's vast cultural and mineral wealth, but also its painful colonial history. His works have been exhibited in South Africa, Europe, and the United States, as African art has risen in popularity. One of his pieces can fetch up to $30,000 at an international auction. While those prices make him one of Congo's highest-paid artists, industry insiders say by international standards, his work only fetches average prices.
I think that one should know that the artists here from Africa are regarded differently on the international art scene, and I think it's a struggle of many artists in Africa to get the same recognition.
Sculptor Freddie Tsimba says one problem is the lack of support at home. His works, made of discarded items like bullet casings, keys, and spoons, are shown internationally, but get little notice in Congo. These original pieces and antique crafts sell for a song at the bustling Kinshasa art market. But high-end work is rare, says local art promoter Fabrice Bashonga.
Congolese art is going very cheap in the international market, mainly because of the lack of consideration locally by the local market.
Artist Vichwa Milambe Bondo has exhibited and lived around the world, but returned home despite the challenges. He works at this recently established incubator for young Congolese talent.
I said, okay, it's good for me to stay here. Why? Because we need to build art scene and to build, to make something sense, and the people can buy artwork in Congo. And now these people start to buy, but it's process, it's big challenge. I think the really challenge is to be here.
The studio also features women artists.
It is not easy at all because the men, they push you around a bit from all sides, and especially in the Congolese art scene, the market is rather difficult. To get someone to help you show your talent or your work, they block your path. You are a bit pushed aside.
Younger artists also say they struggle to establish themselves.
Me, my biggest dream is that I would like for people to talk about Congolese art the way we talk about American art, the way we talk about German art, the way we talk about Belgian art. I would like for the Congolese artist to be able to rise on the international stage.
Congolese artists say they are hopeful. That bit by bit, stroke by stroke, and line by line, that dream will finally come into focus. Anita Powell, VOA News, Kinshasa.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, from recycled to earthed homes to bling, the latest trends in interior design. We'll be right back.
In the Central African Republic, gunmen opened fire on a UN base close to the presidential residence. In South Africa, the highest court rejects athlete Oscar Pistorius' appeal against his 13-year jail term. In Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari declares he will seek re-election next year. In Libya, the United Nations report that torture is rampant in Libyan prisons where armed groups are in control. Finally, in Egypt, Ashraf Mohi El-Din, owner of a 130-year-old studio in Cairo, operates a vintage Linaf camera to capture modern-day celebrities.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Designers are embracing recycled and repurposed materials at a hospitality design show in Los Angeles. When it comes to the latest color and material trends, warm gray and neutrals are proving popular. Now, the Pantone color of the year 2018, ultraviolet, is also making an appearance. Popular materials include nickel, copper, and bronze. For upholstery, it's velvet and suede. Another important trend in hotels is using repurposed materials and designs focused on adaptive reuse. There are materials such as reused woods and old denim jeans that have been turned into flooring and tabletops. When it comes to luxury, a current trend in hospitality design is the use of crystals in almost every way. Well, next up, designers and fashionistas gathered in Dubai for the first ever Prita Cover Buyers Lane Modest Fashion event. It comes as the global fashion industry slowly makes to the potential of modest fashions. Around 30 modest fashion designers, some Muslim, some not, from almost 24 countries, showcasing their long-sleeved floor-length pieces. Some mainstream designers and retailers are making attempts to tap into the estimated $2.6 trillion Muslim lifestyle market. Last month, U.S. department store chain Macy's launched its own modest clothing line, targeting Muslim fashionistas. And finally, a style of lemon grown exclusively in the French Riviera is gaining popularity among world chefs for its sweet taste, fragrant aroma, and versatility. The Menton lemon is described as less aggressive, less acidic, and more sugary than other lemon types in the world. The French Riviera's mild Mediterranean climate, together with the mist of the summer months, contributes to greatly lower the fruit's bitterness. Locals are so grateful to the lemon that they celebrate this bright yellow star with an annual festival. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Zimbra Corn is going to be a company that's built in Africa, for Africa, and scaled in Africa.